I will be reading an excerpt from one of my favorite banned books, The Fellowship of the Ring, by J.R.R. Tolkien. Chapter 1, A Long Expected Party. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 111st birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar, and had been the wonder of the Shire for 60 years, ever since his remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. The riches he had brought back from his travels had now become a local legend, and it was popularly believed, whatever the old folk might say, that the hill at Bag End was full of tunnels and stuffed treasure. And if that was not enough for fame, there was also his prolonged vigor to marvel at. Time wore on, but it seemed to have little effect on Mr. Baggins. At 90 he was much the same as at 50. At 99 they began to call him well preserved, but unchanged would have been nearer the mark. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing. It seemed unfair that anyone should possess apparently perpetual youth, as well as reputedly inexhaustible wealth. It will have to be paid for, they said. It isn't natural, and trouble will come of it. But so far trouble had not come, and as Mr. Baggins was generous with his money, most people were willing to forgive him his oddities and his good fortune. He remained on visiting terms with his relatives, except, of course, the Sackville Bagginses, and he had many devoted admirers among the hobbits of poor and unimportant families. But he had no close friends until some of his younger cousins began to grow up. The eldest of these, and Bilbo's favorite, was young Frodo Baggins. When Bilbo was 99, he adopted Frodo as his heir and brought him to live at Bag End, and the hopes of the Sackville Bagginses were finally dashed. Bilbo and Frodo happened to have the same birthday, September 22nd. "You'd better come and live here, Frodo my lad," said Bilbo one day, "and then we can celebrate our birthday parties comfortably together." At that time Frodo was still in his tweens, as the hobbits called the irresponsible 20s between childhood and coming of age at 33. 12 more years passed. Each year the Bagginses had lived very lively combined birthday parties at Bag End. But now it was understood that something quite exceptional was being planned for that autumn. Bilbo was going to be 111. A rather curious number, and a very respectable age for a hobbit. The old Took himself had only reached 130. And Frodo was going to be 33, an important number, the date of his coming of age. Tongues began to wag in Hobbiton and Bywater, and rumor of the coming event traveled all over the Shire. The history and character of Mr. Bilbo Baggins became once again the chief topic of conversation, and the older folks suddenly found their reminiscences in welcome demand. No one had a more attentive audience than old Ham Gamgee, commonly known as the Gaffer. He held forth at the Ivy Bush, a small inn on the Bywater Road, and he spoke with some authority, for he had tended the garden at Bag End for 40 years, and had helped old Holman at the same job before that. Now that he was himself growing old and stiff in the joints, the job was mainly carried out by his younger son, Sam Gamgee. Both father and son were on very friendly terms with Bilbo and Frodo. They lived on the hill itself in number 3 Bagshot Row, just below Bag End. "A very nice, well-spoken, gentle hobbit is Mr. Bilbo, as I've always said," the Gaffer declared. With perfect truth, for Bilbo was very polite to him, calling him Master Hamfast, and consulting him constantly on the growing of vegetables. In the matter of roots, especially potatoes, the Gaffer was recognized as the leading authority by all in the neighborhood, including himself. "But what about this Frodo that lives with him?" asked old Noakes of Bywater. "Baggins is his name, but he's more than half a brandy-buck, they say. It beats me why any Baggins of Hobbiton would go looking for a wife away there in Buckland, where folks are so queer." "No wonder they're queer," put in Daddy Two-Foot, the Gaffer's next-door neighbor, "if they live on the wrong side of the Brandywine River, and right against the old forest. That's a dark bad place if half the tales be true." "You're right, Dad," said the Gaffer. "Not that the Brandybucks of Buckland live in the old forest, but they're a queer breed, seemingly. They fool about with boats on that big river, and that isn't natural. Small wonder this trouble came of it, I say. But be that as it may, Mr. Frodo is a nice young hobbit as you could wish to meet. Very much like Mr. Bilbo, in more than looks. After all, his father was a Baggins. A decent, respectable hobbit was Mr. Drogo Baggins, and there was never much to tell of him till he drowned." "Drowned?" said several voices. They had heard this and other darker rumors before, of course, but hobbits have a passion for family history, and they were ready to hear it again.